Wow. I gotta say, I feel bad for you Browns fans. I mean, no fan base in this league has suffered more than Browns fans, and it just seems to continue. The factory of sadness never ends. Jesus. So obviously everybody's heard the news by now. The Cleveland Browns have fired John Dorsey, which is the dumbest move they've made since they've gotten this team back in 1999. Just a terrible mistake, because he was the only positive in this organization. That man was responsible for all the talent that's on this team right now. He's the one that drafted Myles Garrett. He's the one that drafted the Baker Mayfield. He's the one that got a Nick Chubb. He's the one that had a big influence in going to get Landry from the Dolphins and going to get Odell in the offseason from the Giants. He was the one, he had a big part to play in that. He was basically the one responsible for all the talent that's on this team right now. This is a very talented team. An undisciplined team, but they're very talented. All they really needed was a good coach. Now granted, Dorsey made a big mistake. He hired Freddie Kitchens as the head coach. He promoted him. Instead of going after Bruce Arians, he chose this guy. And I get that Baker may have put a recommendation in because, Freddie Kitchens was his guy. He really liked Freddie Kitchens. But you cannot let the decision for the head coach of your team be determined by what your second-year quarterback thinks. And I get it. You want your quarterback to have a great relationship with the head coach. But if you look at this guy and he's not head coach material, don't hire him just because the quarterback has a good relationship with that guy. That is a terrible decision. I don't know what Dorsey saw in this guy, and just I don't know what he was thinking when he looked at Freddie Kitchens. It was like, yeah, that's head coach material. He should be the head coach for this team. I don't know what he was thinking, but that was the biggest mistake he made, and it was a big one because it cost him this season. Freddie Kitchens was the worst coach in the entire NFL this season. The Cleveland Browns did not live up to expectation, finished the season 6-10, worse than last year, and you got people looking at Baker like he's a bust, people looking at Odell like he's washed, and all these players just looking terrible, and once again, Cleveland looks like they're back to mediocrity after 1 year. It was a very bad year, and I understood that Freddie Kitchens needed to be fired, which is why, an hour and a half after the Bengals game, they fired this dude. That was the right move to make because he was not head coach material. That makes sense. But to fire this guy? It boggles. He was doing a good job. He's responsible for getting all this talent here, and you fire that guy? Cleveland once again finds a way to screw up. You take 1 step forward and 2 steps back. All this team needed, you had the talent, and you had a guy that knew how to draft talented players. All the Cleveland Browns needed was a coach that was disciplined, would get these players to be disciplined, and actually knew what he was doing. You needed somebody to come in and hold these players accountable for their actions. That's all you needed. You were getting rumors about trying to get Urban Myers to come out of retirement and come be the coach for the Browns. You're hearing about Greg Roman from the Ravens, trying to see if you could pull him from the Ravens and become the head coach here. You were even a Mike McCarthy as well, who won a Super Bowl with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, trying to bring him here and possibly put him as the next head coach. Just somebody who has experience and could help this young core. You were looking for a guy like that. That's all you needed. But instead, Jimmy Haslem, the terrible owner that he is, overreacts again and decides to fire Jim Dorsey for a terrible reason. Now, a lot of people are saying it's mostly not really a firing. It's more like they had disagreements about how the coaching situation was going to be handled in terms of looking for the next head coach, and they couldn't come to agreement, so they decided to part ways. But still, you don't let a guy like that go. Honestly, I really feel bad for Browns fans. I know a lot of Browns fans. I'm friends with some Browns fans. I talk to some Brown fans on YouTube. I know a couple YouTubers who are Browns fans, and it's like, I feel bad for these guys because they put so much time and effort into this team, and they have so much love and care for this organization, and to just have all of this be wasted, it's killing them, and they're ready to switch. They can't do this anymore. Think about it. They sacrificed a decade of football. They were, this decade, the 2010s, they were the worst team in the NFL. They went this whole decade without making the postseason. 1-15, 0-16. To deal with all that mediocrity, to get to this point where you have the talent on the team to be successful, and you have a GM that knows what he's doing. All you need is a coach to put all that work in, just for all of it to be done. A decade of Browns football wasted. Now we're ready to start over. Now, who knows? Maybe Haslem brings in a GM that's better than Dorsey. I doubt it, but maybe he does. Maybe Urban Meyer decides he wants to come out of retirement and he becomes the head coach. Who knows? I doubt both of these things are going to happen, and I doubt a lot of Browns fans see that happening. But if it does, we may look, and they end up having success, we may look back at this and say, well, it wasn't really a great decision to fire him, but you managed to get somebody to replace him that was better. So overall, we can accept that. But I don't know if they can get a GM that was doing a better job than what Dorsey was doing, because he can actually find talent in that draft, and he did. And I just don't know what you do from here. It just boggles me that they would just sacrifice everything. Knowing this, it really looks like they're trying to have another rebuild. When you fire your GM that was doing a great job, it looks like you're ready to have another rebuild. So what's going to happen with these players? Because a lot of those players, they love John Dorsey because he brought them here. And, you know, he drafted some of these guys and he brought them here and he believed in them. So now you got no head coach going into the offseason. You got no GM now. Some of the players aren't even like, they don't even like being here. You got rumors about certain players wanting to leave. What are you going to do? Trades may happen. Some of these players may get traded. You may be going back into the basement. It's really looking like that. I can't believe they made this decision to fire John Dorsey. It doesn't make sense. He's been the only positive. He's been the best GM you guys have had since you got your team back in 1999. He was doing a good job. He made one fatal mistake in choosing to hire Freddie Kitchens instead of going after Bruce Arians, and that was enough for them to fire him. If it was really an issue with the direction of who should be the next head coach, couldn't you have just retained him and say, I don't want you to have an input in this? Or, I don't know, you have to come up with some sort of agreement. But you don't let a guy like that go, especially if he's doing a good job. This is a very dysfunctional organization, and he was the one positive here. To let him go just shows that this organization, they do not have the words consistency and success in their vocabulary. They do not know what that means. Because if you're going to let go of a guy like that was doing such a great job and was the best GM you guys have had since you got your team back, it just goes to show you that Jimmy Haslem doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't care about this team. He doesn't care about the fans. They don't know what they're doing. And now you got thousands to hundreds of thousands of Browns fans they're just done. They're so done. They want this team to be sold. They don't want to support this team. They're so done with this. They're just sick and tired of this because they just spent a whole decade going through the worst brand of football we've ever seen. They've had to deal with that for a decade just to get the talent on this roster. And granted, it was a bad year, but there was hope. You still had a great GM that was doing his job, and you still had the talent. All that was left is a coach. Do you know how long it takes to get a good coach? It's really difficult to get a good head coach that knows what he's doing. But it's also difficult to get a good GM as well and a very talented team. You sacrificed this decade to get both. And now that you had that and all you needed was a coach, you throw that away? Because you couldn't come into agreement with how the next head coach is going to be decided? Jimmy Haslem does not care about the fans. They're sick and tired of this. Just sell the team already. You got so many organizations that just need to sell the team. Jimmy Haslem needs to sell his team. Freaking, I don't even want to speak his name because I know I got to talk about that next because they just hired Ron Rivera. But even him, Snyder, he's got to sell the team too. You got a bunch of guys that need to sell the team. Spanos got to sell the team and let those Chargers go back to San Diego where they belong. It's just dysfunction after dysfunction. And even with the Redskins being that bad, and even with the Chargers being that bad, they still found a way to make the playoffs this decade. They still found a way to make the playoffs. The Browns haven't made the playoffs. This was their last real opportunity with the talent they had here. All they needed was a coach. And next year they may be set. With the coach that's going to hold these players accountable, they'd be much more disciplined and they'd be much more ready to play next season. They'd be more disciplined, they'd be ready to go, and who knows, maybe they could have made the playoffs next season. Now, you got a dysfunctional organization with players that are unsatisfied with how the season went and are very concerned for what's going to happen next season. No head coach, no GM. This team is screwed. This organization is screwed, and the fans are sick and tired of it. I thought the fans would leave after 1-15 and 0-16, but they stick around. I think after going through that nonsense to get the talent that's on this team, only to now see it getting ready to go to waste, I don't know if Browns fans can take this anymore. This looks like it's the end. The factory of sadness never ends, and it looks like they're going back to the basement. Now, who knows? Maybe by some miracle, Haslem finds a GM that can do a better job than Dorsey. He'll actually be able to evaluate talent well, while also knowing how to by also getting the right head coach to help coach that talent. Who knows? And maybe you also get Urban Meyer. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but it's looking dark for the Browns again. I feel bad for that organization. I don't feel bad for that. Let me scratch that. I feel bad for the players. My bad. I feel bad for the players, and I feel bad for the fans. But this organization, it needs to die. It needs to burn up. Maybe the Browns need to leave again. Let this team get sold, go off to some sort of different location, and then we get a new Browns team to come in, and maybe this third Browns team could have some level of success and actually know what they're doing. Because this is just getting ridiculous. I feel so bad for these Browns fans, man. That's all I got. I just wow. You gotta feel tough for these guys, man. Like, I don't even know how to just. I'm a mess right now because I'm shocked that they would do something this stupid. That's all I got. I'm out. Peace.